We will now turn to our first panel of the day. And we have a very esteemed panel. This is the DeFi and nonprofits panel. We coined DeFi with a PHI, taking a twist on the current trend of decentralized finance, and we're using it as PHI for philanthropy. The panel is being moderated by Paul Lamb. Paul is a BitGive board member and also the principal of Man on a Mission Consulting. He has been writing, researching, and consulting in the field of blockchain and social good for many years. Paul, I'll hand it off to you to first introduce yourself and then your panelists.
Thanks so much, Connie. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here and to have this conversation on decentralized philanthropy and nonprofits. We've got, as Connie said, we've got a stellar panel of experts and practitioners in this area. They include Rhodri Davies with the Charities Aid Foundation, Ettore Rossetti with Save the Children, Rick Shreves with Mercy Corps, and Wendy Hapgood with the Wild Tomorrow Fund. Welcome all of you esteemed panelists, and I'll give you a moment shortly to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in this world of decentralized philanthropy and nonprofits and charities. Before I do that, however, I want to make a direct appeal to all of you who are participating today, to make a donation to the BitGive Foundation, building off of what you just heard of the wonderful work that Connie is doing, that we're doing. And in fact, I'm going to make a personal appeal for whoever gives the biggest donation today. I'm personally going to send you this shirt. I don't know if you can. I told you so, which any of you Bitcoin or crypto owners can wear with pride today with the run up in the market. Maybe not so much in 2018, but today you can wear it with pride. So use the Slack channel, use the chat, give your bid for this as well as the watches, and I will send it to whoever donates the most to the BitGive Foundation. All right, so let me just set the stage a little bit about the topic today and what the conversation will include. Basically, we're going to discuss how nonprofits are utilizing and innovating around blockchain and cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about some of the trends in this area, some of the specific activities, programs that are happening, building off of some of the other ones that you heard about previously. And then do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Where is all of this headed? And with us to sort of drive the conversation and provide their insights and experience. Again, we've got an amazing panel. I would invite each of you to just quickly tell us who you are and what you're doing in this crazy world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in terms of the social good. And Rick, let's start with you.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending. My name's Rick Shreves. I'm the Director of Emerging Technology at Mercy Corps. I'm not going to give a Mercy Corps intro. I would presume most of you know who Mercy Corps is. In my role at Mercy Corps, I'm briefed to explore new and emerging uses of technology that have the potential application for the sector, and then to spin up field trials and proofs of concept of that tech, and then evangelize those learnings, not only at Mercy Corps, but to the broader sector at large. In that role, I've sort of led the agency in the exploration of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I've been in the crypto space since late 2012, early 2013. We've published a series of white papers about how DLT could be used to advance humanitarian aid and development. In fact, we just partnered with Danish Red Cross on a new white paper that was published last week that calls for sector action to create a shared DLT infrastructure. We have done some work in the blockchain and DLT area, not as much as I wish we would have done, but we're sort of a traditional NGO, and it takes a while to line everybody up and get us all pointed in the right direction and to take on the risk that's associated with some of these projects. But I'll stop there, and we can dive more deeply into those individual topics when the time comes.
Thanks so much, Rick. Ettore, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. And thanks for inviting me to this event, Connie. We really appreciate it. Our journey, Save the Children, is 101 years old. We're a global non-governmental organization, and we help kids in the US and 120 countries around the world make sure they have healthcare, education, and protection from harm every day and in times of emergencies and in times of the pandemic we're facing now. I've been with Save the Children for 16 of those years. And back in 2013, we were proud to be a recipient of funds from BitGive for response to Typhoon Haiyan. And that was, in fact, on the first Bitcoin Black Friday, which is resuming again this year. So honored to be here. My role at Save the Children has been starting things throughout my career. So innovating truly with our digital program, but now including gamers and streamers and cryptocurrency. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Ettore. Let's go to Wendy.
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Wendy Hapgood. I'm from an NGO called Wild Tomorrow Fund, and our mission is to save wildlife and wild places. And we're focused right now in Southern Africa, where our biggest project is creating and restoring a wildlife reserve. So saving habitat and reconnecting the landscape. My background before conservation was in digital electronic FX, so traditional currencies. So I have a natural interest in the crypto world and then this emerging technology. And I was introduced to it through BitGive, and thanks to BitGive is how we entered as a charity the world of fundraising in the crypto world. So we're really excited about that and reaching out to what I think is a kind of a different audience that maybe aren't every day thinking about animals and wildlife. So that's what excites us about being a part of this world. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Wendy. Rhodri, last but definitely not least.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. I'm Rhodri Davies. So I'm head of policy at the Charities Aid Foundation in the UK. So it's a large UK registered non-profit, and we've got partner offices in 9 countries around the world. As I say, head up public policy there, which is sort of my day job, but I also run Giving Thought, which is our in-house think tank, where we give ourselves a bit of space to think about a lot of the issues affecting philanthropy and civil society from a kind of bigger picture and longer term perspective. And one of the things we've done for the last 6 or 7 years is a stream of work thinking about the impact of emerging technologies on civil society, the organizations in them, and how people are able to support good causes. And one of the first things I did there was getting into an interest in crypto and then subsequently blockchain. So I've been sort of in and around that world thinking about it and giving people my opinion for the last 7 years or so. And yeah, I kind of still sit very much in the nonprofit world. So my interest really in kind of keeping on top of what's interesting and going on in the crypto world and the space between that and nonprofits, and trying to sort of make sure the mainstream nonprofit world is keeping track with it and remains interested.
Great, thanks so much, Rhodri. As I said, a really stellar panel. So let's get started now with our conversation. Just a quick reminder, though, if you have questions, put them in the chat, put them on the Slack channel. Hopefully, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A once we've gone through a series of questions that I have and we have around this topic. So let's start from the beginning. What do we mean by this, this topic of decentralized philanthropy and nonprofits? Let's talk about defining what the work that nonprofits and NGOs do in the context of cryptocurrency and blockchain, as you all know, commonly referred to as crypto philanthropy and blockchain for good. What is this thing that we're talking about? And Rhodri, maybe you could start, because I know you've done a lot of work at a high level around this. And please, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what's your opinion when it comes to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it does break down into a couple of different things. And I think having clarity about which of them we're talking about when we talk about crypto philanthropy is helpful. I guess the most basic one was probably where I started in my journey of understanding this, which is it seemed like a new form of money, or at the very least a new pot of money. And from a sort of fundraiser or NGO perspective, new pots of money are always very welcome. So there's an interest in knowing what this thing is, cryptocurrency, whether it's something that they should be thinking about in terms of their fundraising strategy, and whether it opens up entirely new kind of marketplaces in terms of donors, and whether they're different to traditional donor marketplaces. I think that still remains, a really big area of interest. And there's lots of kind of interesting unanswered questions there about who are the people making the money in this marketplace? What are their drivers? What are they looking for when they engage with NGOs? I think there are then a whole host of other areas that open up as you start to think more about the kind of underlying technology that makes crypto possible, obviously talking about sort of blockchain and DLT, and how that's relevant to some of the inner workings of NGOs. And I mean, things like their kind of the basic way you kind of move money within an NGO and some of the different functional parts of it, whether that's sort of, the treasury function or other parts of the finance function. And also, I think at a more fundamental level, one of the things I'm really interested in is whether some of these technologies can be used to change the ways in which we're able to organize and allow us to organize in much more sort of distributed and non-hierarchical ways, but at a scale that was never possible before. So that we're sort of not doing new things, but we're doing them in a way that the technology is making possible. And I think that's where there's some really interesting and exciting stuff happening.
Wonderful. Thanks for that very clear overview. Anyone else want to add to that? Again, how you think, about this topic, or what do we mean again by decentralized philanthropy, crypto philanthropy, blockchain for social good? Any other definitions that other folks want to share?
I think when we talk crypto philanthropy, Paul, at least, at Mercy Corps, when we look at it, we do tend to actually segment that a bit. On one hand, we have the individual crypto donors, and then we start to get into those questions about, is that pool of donors, distinct in some fashion? Is reaching them different than reaching other mass market donors, et cetera? And, how do we support them and make it easy for them to give crypto and to know that we accept crypto? So that's one side, is the individual crypto donor side. A second segment that we look at is the crypto corporates, right? So the Coinbases and the foundations who are actually starting to become large entities who are exploring corporate social responsibility. And then a third segment would be donor advised funds, and here like the Fidelity situation stands out. And then I guess the fourth would be, is there a new set of business models that's starting to arise as the result of DLT and crypto giving? And they're a real extreme example, but a good example would be something like ALICE, right? The decentralized altruistic community approach to things. So we don't look at the crypto space as being, uniform across the board. There's different segments and there's different ways to approach it, depending on who you want to engage with.
Go Thank you. All right. Well, we've talked about this topic at a high level, kind of a 30,000 foot level. Let's dig in. Let's bring it down to the ground. The second question I would love to hear from the panelists on is, how are nonprofits using crypto and blockchain to further their impact and achieve sustainability? If folks could give very specific use cases, I think that would be helpful, again, to bring it down to the ground level. And maybe, Wendy, we can start with you, to talk about your activities on.
Yeah, I didn't mention we're 5 years old as a charity, so we're pretty new. And I think Rhodri's point about we see crypto as a way, especially crypto donations, as a way to diversify our donor base. So we see it as a new audience. And our experience, we started with, thanks to the BitGive Foundation, with a fundraiser. That was a few years ago for really, I think, interesting project, which was bringing out wildlife forensic experts from New York who work for the government to come and help train rangers in Africa, near our projects on wildlife crime scene forensics to help with anti-poaching. So that project involved purchasing a lot of equipment, fingerprinting dust and special crime scene forensic items that they helped us purchase here in the US to bring out to South Africa, where the course was done, the training. So thanks to donors who donated on the GiveTrack platform, we bought those items. So, I tried really hard to actually buy those items in Bitcoin to really show the transparency, because I think that's what's really exciting. If a donor sees their donation coming, they see us then making a purchase. But it was kind of hard. So we ended up mostly converting to dollar and then buying the items. So that was really exciting. So, and what I noticed was all those donors were new. You know, they weren't people already in our audiences and supporter network. They were new people. And it forced us to reach out in a different way and to explore sort of a new techie audience, so to speak. So I think that was exciting. And now we have a second fundraiser live right now on GiveTrack, which is related to COVID relief and helping to provide hunger relief food parcels for the community that's next door to our wildlife reserve. So, you know, it only costs $35 a month to feed a whole family, and that's something of a Bitcoin. So yeah, the challenge is to kind of get people to give the little fraction of their wallet for a good cause. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think this issue of transparency is really important when it comes to donations. And obviously that's a core part of what BitGive does and GiveTrack does. You know, just quickly a comment, donors we found over the years increasingly do not trust nonprofits and the work that they're doing. That the percentage of folks who trust nonprofits to make sure that their donations go to the work on the ground is decreasing. So the importance of transparency is very clear when it comes to engaging donors and giving them a reason to support organizations. Ettore, can you talk a little bit more about Save the Children and what you folks are doing on the ground?
Yeah, sure. So we have a project right now also on GiveTrack, and it's for kids and families in Mexico who are being affected by the COVID pandemic. For those of us in developing countries and developed countries, it affects everyone disproportionately. So unfortunately, the most marginalized are even more marginalized. And in the US, we might be slightly inconvenienced because, you know, learning is remote and kids are home, and we might not be able to commute to our office. But in the developing countries, it is a matter of life and death. You know, they don't have access to basic hygiene, and that could cause other diseases, especially in flu season now. And so this project, which is 30% funded, and we still need to fully fund it, but to reach those communities who need it. And it's the first time we've done a project that is end-to-end on Bitcoin. So it is on the blockchain. We are not cashing out and converting to fiat currency and then making a traditional purchase. So that into itself is a use case and a proof of concept. But it will take communities like those viewers who are watching now who believe in it, that we need to inspire you to change philanthropy. And that trust issue you mentioned, Paul, is really important because it's A, decentralized, and B, transparent. And that's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Rick, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're very familiar with the field. Could you give a couple of other examples of projects, programs that are happening in this space?
Sure. I'll just start with the Mercy Corps example, and then we'll branch out from there. One of the leading use cases that we see in terms of extending our impact and leveraging the advantages of distributed ledgers is cash and voucher assistance. We ran a program in Uganda in the Bidi settlement, refugee camp up in the West Nile region, in partnership with Binance, where we used a crypto token, essentially a stable coin, frankly, that we used as basically a voucher. And through using the token for the voucher, we really dramatically dropped our audit and reconciliation costs relating to tracking that program. And for those of you who haven't worked in this space before, the sort of reporting back that we need to do to donors means that reconciliation of data and proper audit procedures are actually quite time consuming and can be very expensive. It also means that with the sort of real-time feedback that we get from tracking those transactions on a distributed ledger, we're better able to identify potential incidences of fraud and also pivot our programming better if we determine other needs. So we're quite bullish on the cash and voucher assistance use case. And of course, we've seen other work in that area. Oxfam Australia is doing a lot of work in Vanuatu. Of course, World Food Program, the Building Blocks Program, again, same sort of set of benefits that they've found there as well. World Vision with their SICA program has also used crypto tokens for cash and voucher assistance. Other areas where we see potential for improvement, there is supply chain. There are supply chain advantages to using DLT in certain use cases. And of course, the whole donor engagement space, whether it's crypto philanthropy or increased transparency as the result of donation tracking, are the big areas that we see.
Great, thank you. And just quickly, we're hearing a number of acronyms. DLT has come up a couple of times. That's distributed ledger technology, a kind of blockchain. You just heard Binance mentioned, which is a major cryptocurrency exchange. If you have questions as we go about any of the acronyms you hear, put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we spell those out. Rhodri, any other things sort of across the spectrum that you want to mention that haven't come up yet?
I think a lot of them have been covered, because I guess my experience over having sort of kept track of this stuff over the last few years is that in a way the space hasn't grown as fast as I thought it might at one point, and I think that we haven't necessarily expanded beyond where we were a few years ago. And I think perhaps that's because partly, the market has been up and down, and the value of crypto itself has obviously gone down significantly, and then it's sort of back up and quite buoyant now. I think also there was a point a few years ago, perhaps 2017, 2018, where, from my personal opinion, I think there were a number of not very well thought through projects, particularly overselling some of the potential around creating charity specific tokens. And I think there was some quite sort of inflated expectations being sold around about what they could do and the kinds of increases in value that they might bring about. And I think there was a slight bit of disillusionment in the nonprofit world. And I think we've had a sort of healthy bit of rowing back slightly, taking stock, and actually now the projects that we're left with are genuine use cases that people are sort of working through in a conscientious way. And perhaps that's that bit slower, and there aren't as many of them as there might otherwise have been, but I think we're in a good place broadly.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just one example of what you said about, a lot of projects either disappearing or being downsized after a really active period at the height of the market with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. In other areas, I think we are, as you said, Rhodri, making progress. In particular, some folks may know that hundreds of billions of dollars are being donated via cryptocurrency globally each year, and that number is increasing. So we see, even though some projects and work in this area are not what they used to be, we'll put it that way, in other areas we're seeing interesting developments. On that note, I was hoping other folks could talk about the trends in the sector. What do you see happening, good, bad, and ugly? Anyone want to start?
I'll start. I would say, with PayPal's recent announcement that you can buy and sell some of the most known cryptocurrencies is a development to help it be more mainstream. PayPal is such a trusted source with their tokenization of transactions, and the fact that they are now in the game, I think, is a potential game changer, and also speaks to a trend of other traditional players joining.
Absolutely. So the sector is growing as a result of the big players kind of coming in and helping to both bring more exposure to it and get more folks involved. Any other trends that people want to point out?
I can mention one. I think it's a positive development that I think there's more awareness growing around the tax advantages of donating your crypto, and the way it's treated by the US government as an asset, just like stocks, so you can avoid paying capital gains. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about a little bit more, so more people who are holding on to their digital wallets understand the benefits of actually donating from a tax perspective at the end of the year, if that's not clear. Yeah, so I think that's positive. It's not new, but I'm seeing more of that sort of awareness growing, I guess. And also, I think, I don't know, you all probably know more than me, but the attention on it, I think, especially in the US, where people can't really avoid paying taxes on it. Like, I think it's not something you can hide anymore. So perhaps that will incentivize people to have to think more about how they treat it, and how they can make the most out of that advantage of donating. Yeah.
Well said. And quick commercial break. If you give cryptocurrency to BitGive, you will get a full tax write-off. Just wanted to put that out there. Rick, anything else on the trend side, things you're seeing?
Yeah, the trend that we think is most meaningful right now is the rise of central bank digital currencies and the possibility of there being a global stable coin on the horizon. Of course, by that I mean Libra. Just as a disclaimer, or in this name of transparency, Mercy Corps is one of the founding members of the Libra Association, and I sit on the technical steering committee over there. So, these opinions do come with that background. But the idea of us having a low cost, widely accepted, low volatility coin that we could use across countries and in a variety of different programming contexts was really the incentive for us to get involved in Libra. And now, of course, Libra's kicked up a big storm. The central banks are taking digital currencies seriously. We're seeing a growth in CDBCs. Bahamas, of all places, is the first in the market with the sand dollar. We operate in the Bahamas. So, for example, we're looking at that quite hard right now. If everyone has a digital wallet that's available to them, and on-ramps and off-ramps are ubiquitous, it really would change the way that you could do things, even from disaster relief to cash transfer programming to conditional giving, et cetera, et cetera. So we think that's the most significant trend in the short to medium term, at least right now in the space.
Right, thank you. And by the way, if folks aren't familiar with Libra, that's the Facebook cryptocurrency play, which has had some very interesting developments over the last couple of years. Rick can tell you more about that. Well, let's move into some of the challenges, in particular, you folks who are doing work on the ground. What are some of the challenges that you've faced and opportunities as a result of your work in this space? Wendy, do you want to share anything?
Sure. I'll start with the challenges. I mentioned a little bit earlier that to me, it seems like as a charity, we have our network of donors, and we don't know who within that network has digital cryptocurrencies. So it's hard to know who to target. And then I don't know what percentage of the population, say in the US or around the world, actually has crypto. So it seems quite a select pool of people, and then they have to be willing to give a 0.00 something away. So I think the challenge is reaching out to that audience and finding them and making the case, for why it's the impact they can have with that Bitcoin donation or crypto donation. And that I think is the opportunity too, because I think, well, actually within wildlife conservation, I feel we're speaking a lot to the same people that already know the issues. They know about the mass extinction of wildlife, the terrible state the planet's in, but maybe they don't feel empowered to make a change. So I think it's an opportunity to speak to a new audience and empower them to feel that they can make a difference and see the difference they're having. And I think the platform, GiveTrack, it's very distinct projects that you set up. So hopefully that builds trust where people understand exactly what they're funding. It's not going into some big pool of money that you don't really understand where it's going. It's going to a specific project that's broken down and where that funding's going. So I think that's an opportunity to build trust and reach out to new donors who may not understand the issues that we're trying to address. Yeah. Great.
And one quick factoid going back to your comment about the understanding of Bitcoin blockchain among the general population of potential donors. The last statistics I've seen is roughly 1 to 2% of all giving, meaning the types of giving channels is through Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So it is still a very small percent, and there's that opportunity to grow it as awareness grows. Ettore, do you want to talk about challenges, opportunities that you've encountered?
Yes, I think one challenge is the end-to-end nature. GiveTrack is unique in that it is from the donor to the field, and you can see it in the in the meter, and you can see the impact with the updates in the project. But there are a lot of in developing countries, there aren't enough players, merchants in the supply chain that actually would provide utility on the ground as a practical matter. To solve food insecurity, can someone in a local market in Uganda, purchase something with crypto that might be in a digital wallet on their mobile phone? I mean, we're experimenting with a potential pilot there in Uganda for that purpose. As Rick mentioned, unconditional, cash vouchers are a staple of the NGO sector. But in order for it to make transformational change, we have to overcome the challenge of there have to be more players in it. Kind of like what Wendy was just saying, it's still very niche, and we need it to be a bit more adopted so that it could provide utility on the ground. Otherwise, the way we accept crypto today is very much a consumer transaction where someone makes a donation and we convert it to fiat the same day or next day, and so to avoid the volatility. And I don't know that kind of move is sustainable over time to grow.
Thank you. Rick, challenges and opportunities?
Sorry about that. I was typing some stuff in the Q&A. A couple of things. On the field tech side of things, really, digital literacy, access to internet, access to mobile devices, cost of connectivity, on-ramps and off-ramps to fiat currency. Those are all the big issues in the field. The second side of it is, internally working for a traditional NGO, getting treasury on board, getting workflow processes in place, et cetera, getting the donations team, the fundraising team on board with understanding how to embrace those audiences. That has been a bit of a struggle. And I think that situation is not unique to Mercy Corps. Shout out to Save. You guys have done some really great work in that space, and you show real vision with going out and engaging with the gamer community as well. You're really cultivating and growing a new audience, which is brilliant and a great move. I know that Heifer International is on a panel later today. Jesus Pizarro is speaking. That's a great person to talk to about this, because Heifer was one of the very first in this field and is doing some really exciting things. And then also Danish Red Cross is doing some really exciting things too, with catastrophe bonds that are backed by blockchain and complementary currencies. There's just so much happening in this space right now. We finally are sort of catching up. So the barriers are starting to fall. To loop it back to your original question, Paul.
Great, thank you. Rhodri, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly echo a lot of what we've heard there. I mean, I think, one of the big challenges for a long time was that kind of last mile problem, which, as Ettore was saying, you get it into the country, but you sort of move things on the blockchain, and that's nice, but then you can't actually spend them in any meaningful way, which links up to what Rick was saying, I think, about one of the big developments being the emergence of central bank digital currencies, or also if the Libra project really sort of beds in, then you finally got that utility in country, and that problem sort of disappears. So I think it's still a problem, but it can be overcome. I think a couple of the other things, thinking about it from the point of view of the very sort of long tail of organizations that aren't the ones in the room here that have kind of got their heads around this and seen the benefits of it, but potentially could be taking advantage of it. I think there are lots of the traditional barriers you get whenever you talk about nonprofits engaging with technology, which is just awareness of it, understanding the risk appetite they have for engaging, the perceived risk of engaging with the technology, which might not actually balance out with the real risk. I think there are sort of real concerns about volatility when it comes to holding on to crypto. And I think they're actually the number of exchanges now and intermediaries that are able to offer instant exchange services to kind of open that up to more of a mass market of nonprofits are probably going to expand that that potential much quicker. And then I think the final thing as well is around transparency, which is obviously, I think, being really kind of shown, the benefits of being shown by a project like GiveTrack. And I think that's a really good implementation of it, and it shows how it works for some particular donors and for the organizations themselves. I think there's still a wider question about the extent to which that plays into the motivations of all donors. I think there's a danger we assume that transparency, if we can provide it, will just mean that people give more. And I'm not sure that's true for all mass market donors. So I think we have to kind of be more sophisticated in our thinking about what transparency is and how to use it.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Can't make assumptions, certainly. So we've got a ton of questions, but before we try and address those, as I said earlier, we want to do some quick crystal ball gazing and ask folks to kind of think forward, say 5 years. What's going to happen, with all of this, with the crypto philanthropy and blockchain for social good? What do you see happening as you gaze into your personal crystal ball? Rick, you want to start?
This is always such an area fraught with landmines, right? Yes. I mean, God forbid you look at my track record on this before you ask me that question.
Yeah. Well, we're going to hold everyone to their answer. We'll come back in 5 years. Go ahead.
I'm going to circle back to what I said earlier. I think the rise of CDBCs and the possibility of having an international stablecoin are going to be huge. Imagine, if you will, that people are able to engage either directly with beneficiaries or with programs they care about via a WhatsApp payment interface or one of the other mobile channels that are so popular around the world. And in certain places in the world in particular, that's true. Facebook and WhatsApp are literally the internet, if you will. So I think that's the biggie that I'm looking forward to, because I think it is going to change donation models somewhat. It is going to change the direct giving market, and it's going to disrupt the heck out of the remittances market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ettore, what do you see in your crystal ball?
Yeah, I agree with Rick. There's going to be lots of disintermediation. I think there'll be sort of integration, disintermediation, and innovation into rhyme, right? And but disintermediation. I mean, look at GoFundMe, right? And the way they disrupted sort of direct giving, and the fact that beneficiaries, if everyone's connected in a world where tech companies like Google and Facebook are trying to connect the world. So if we as NGOs look at a connected world where all beneficiaries are connected, then we need to provide a value proposition in the middle. Otherwise, there could be disintermediation for the legacy organizations who do great work and provide lots of value, like trust and scale, to scale impact, so that we can really solve the entrenched problems. And cryptocurrency, I think, the blockchain has the potential and the promise to do it. Look at universal basic income, and the fact that a presidential candidate mainstream in the US was advocating for that means that there's some validity there. I think that's one of the trends, certainly, that could help in the future.
Thank you. Wendy?
Yeah, I think it'd be really exciting when we get to a point where crypto is kind of just another currency in your wallet. So it's as easy to use practically as Venmo, or even Facebook Donate. You click a button and it's done. It knows who you are. You don't have to put in any details. I think making it as easy as possible for people to use it in that way would be amazing. And then I think Ettore mentioned it too. If we could, as a charity, we have our food parcel program now that's live on GiveTrack. If we could, be me doing the purchase, if there was a supermarket in South Africa where we could pay with Bitcoin directly, we would do that. And actually that would take our business from the one that doesn't to the one that does. And then the donors could see end to end, how cool is that as a proof of concept that they donated. They saw the coin go to Wild Tomorrow Fund South Africa, and then they saw it go to the supermarket, and then they see the photos of the families with the parcels. That, to me, is the vision and the dream of what this technology is supposed to be able to do. And I think maybe it's because it's been held onto by people who have it. They don't want to use it. They want to hold on to it. I don't know the psychology of it. maybe the volatility makes people nervous. They think if I give my 0.000 piece that's $20 that they wouldn't think of if it came out of their wallet, if I give it now, maybe I'm losing out because it could be worth more in the future. I don't know the psychology of it, but yeah, I think once people start thinking about it as something more practical, then that will open up a lot of opportunity in this space. Yeah. And actually, I had an idea on that. Maybe companies could, in the traditional philanthropy world, a lot of corporates do matching, or they help you when you're paid to give a portion of your salary. I think a lot of these tech companies, or especially those already in the crypto world, could potentially offer something like that, where employees can sign up to give, a small amount out of their salary every month in Bitcoin. And then it's helping the system start to view it as a tool that's more practical versus an investment.
Great idea. Sort of integrating crypto giving into the larger kind of giving space. Rhodri, you get the last word.
Well, I won't repeat anything anybody else said. I'll give you three very, very quick ideas for what I think might happen in the future, from relatively likely through to quite, much more speculative. I think the first one is related to what we've seen during the pandemic, which is, I think, the sort of enforced process of digital transformation that so many organizations have had to go through in the nonprofit world and elsewhere means that everybody's had to get to grips with technology and the use of it and the issues around it much more than ever before. And at the same time, in the nonprofit world, so many traditional fundraising channels have overnight been closed down because of restrictions on person-to-person interaction. So you have a situation where people are thinking about technology and having to look for new ways to fundraise, and also throw into the mix the fact that crypto is suddenly booming again. I think it's very likely we'll see a lot more interest in this space over the next few years. I think the one that's slightly less likely, although we're seeing it already, so I feel confident, is I think there'll be more projects going live on the ground, experimenting with using DLT to create sort of DAO structures. I mean, Rick mentioned Alice before. I think there are others out there like Giveth.io, but I think we'll see more of that. And that sort of ties into an existing trend around interest in things like new power and kind of shifting power away from centralized hierarchical structures. And then the final one that's more speculative, but I personally think is potentially fascinating, is where we get the use of blockchain technology to create non-crypto unique objects with value. And obviously we've seen that at the moment in the silly example of crypto kitties. But I think where you get the overlap of that and potentially something like the existing marketplace for skins in esports, and you get unique objects that have existing value, but now have scarcity value and are tradable, suddenly you have this huge potential marketplace that could be tapped into for giving. So I think there's some really potentially exciting stuff.
Yeah, we need to think beyond Bitcoin and blockchain, for that matter, as you said, or think about it in different ways. All right, let's turn to questions. We got a few more minutes, and Connie and Brittany, if you're out there, I think we're scheduled to go to 10:45, but I want to be sure, because we do have lots of questions. If we don't get to all the questions, I will copy them, send them to the panelists, and then ask them if they have time to address them, and we'll shoot them back to everyone.
Okay, yeah, so we have some time, actually. We were going to close at 10:45, but we have some extra time. We were hoping to have Ala join us, but she's not here. So go for it.
Fantastic, thanks. We got lots of questions, so it's great to hear that we have a little time for Q&A. So the first question that I wanted to put out there to you folks is there anyone or any way to track or measure aggregate cross-sector growth in crypto philanthropy? I don't know of anybody else. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd just say quickly, there are databases that track the kinds of projects. If you go to positiveblockchain.io, for example, you can see a whole range of projects, but I don't think the tracking and measuring is there in the way that the question is being asked. Anyone else?
I don't know of anything, but I'm going to play devil's advocate with this for a second. Maybe we're asking the wrong question there. And the reason that I say that is what I'm seeing in the market from my conversations with peer agencies is that crypto donors don't necessarily always donate crypto. They prefer to donate cash in many situations, aside from, the tax season swing that we see. And most of the people who are diehard evangelists about the crypto space, they're kind of hodlers, right? And so they would prefer to donate cash instead of donating their crypto because they think there's such an upside to that. Right or wrong, that does seem to be the sort of psychology that we see. So when I talk with our fundraising people, I try to get them not to focus on how much has come in crypto. I try to get them to focus on the fact that this is an affinity signal, showing that audience that we're like them, that we see the value in this. We're doing programs that use this technology. We're one of you. Help support us and help us do our work. And that to me is a big part of where the value is here, as opposed to just raw numbers about how much came in crypto per se.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right in terms of the kind of questions, the right questions we want to be asking. Another question that came in, is there quantitative proof that crypto donors are giving specifically because of increased transparency? Kind of, Rhodri, you touched on this earlier. And does that transparency necessarily mean those nonprofits are more trustworthy than others? Good question.
I'll just pick up on that because it's just because obviously I raised it earlier. I guess it goes to a sort of wider question about what it is that drives donor behavior that links to, I think, a lot of the theorizing that's happened over the last 15, 20 years or so around social impact. And there's been a very strong kind of line of argument, which is, all you have to do is provide donors with kind of rigorous metrics on impact, and that'll make everybody give. And actually, I think, again, you need to be quite careful in assuming that that works across the broad base of donors, particularly in the mass market. Yes, it might work for a particular kind of donor coming from sort of, effective altruism background, or it might work for a big fundraiser, big grant maker. But actually, most of the evidence shows actually for the average donor, if you give them more information on the impact of their donation in these forms, it tends to actually depress their amount of giving because they find it slightly overwhelming. And I think it's similar. What you wouldn't want to do in giving greater transparency to giving, again, is give people a sense of, oh, hang on, actually, now I know that my money's not being spent in the way that I want it to. So I think it works in the context of a project like GiveTrack, where you do have that end-to-end control and it's very carefully thought through and you're working with partners. I think what really worried me a few years ago about some of the projects that I saw coming and getting people getting in touch was they weren't well thought through, and it was a kind of Wild West thing of, we'll just make it all transparent and that will solve everything, and it doesn't really matter about having a relationship with the end user. And I just couldn't see that working, and actually I could see it leading to all sorts of unintended consequences.
Yeah, the increased transparency can terrify the heck out of the fundraising and finance teams, right? No donor really wants to know that their monies were spent paying the air conditioning bill for the headquarters office, right? But we still have to pay that bill, right? The money has to come from somewhere. And that classification of funds as restricted and unrestricted is something everybody balances, because they want more unrestricted funds that they can use on a discretionary basis. But of course, donors increasingly want restricted funds. So when we talk about increasing transparency, there's an assumption that it means more restricted funds and less unrestricted funds. It becomes a hot potato inside the agencies.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. It's totally agree with the other panelists and there's challenges and opportunities around the transparency. Two examples, right? One, donors choose, right? So the localization and project nature of their projects, where it's your school teacher, your classroom, and you're helping them co-fund it, let's say as a parent, like that's just super interesting. It's not just transparency for transparency's sake. It happens to be quantified, and they're, sort of the long tail of even small projects. And the other example I'll give, to Rick's point about sort of the overhead and operational cost question. I mean, look at Cherry Water's innovative model of having those the overhead costs being covered by independent donors, so that the individual donors funds go directly 100% to the programs. Like, I think cryptocurrency is such an innovation that the sector is smart enough to innovate around these legacy problems that we haven't been able to solve. I mean, the fact that world poverty still exists means that something is not working and we need to fix it. we need to end poverty, to quote Dr. Jeffrey Sachs.
Well said. Well said. Another question that came in is more of a clarification. Please explain stablecoin versus cryptocurrency. And Rick, I'm going to throw that your way since you brought up stablecoins early on.
Yeah, I just typed a quick answer into that a while ago. Basically, a stablecoin is simply a digital currency that's pegged to a traditional, what we call fiat currency. So, for example, USDT, the value of it is pegged to the US dollar. So since it's pegged to the fiat currency, the traditional currency, the coin doesn't have the kind of volatility that we would see in something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where there's a very active market for speculators. And of course, the total capex of the market is low enough that whales can move that valuation around to reap profits. So stable coins are a less volatile version of a digital currency. It can still be a cryptocurrency, but then we start getting into the fine points of the architecture of the coin. So let's not go there. Let's just call it a digital currency.
Let's not, at least today. Great, thank you. Another question, are there good places which list case studies or such? And I'm assuming we're talking about crypto philanthropy and blockchain for good. Case studies, reports, examples, where can people go?
Oh, you just named one of the best ones, right? The positiveblockchain.io?
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to say GiveTrack because you can go on there and you can see the past projects and then you can see a report of the impact. So I think that's a great place to go too, because you can see the kinds of things that are possible and the outcomes. So.
Mm-hmm. How much are they paying you, Wendy, by the way?
I know, I'm like, but actually just a general, I'm gonna throw it out to the audience too. You know, as an NGO, that we're not super techie around crypto, but we would love to know what donors want. You know, what do they want to see? If transparency is not that important, that's great to know. You know, we have very, Rhodri was talking about crypto kitties. You know, we have real life things on the ground, like literally zebra, giraffe, animals that we could connect to donations. I mean, we in traditional fundraising have had to raise money to do our rewilding, and literally people love that. You know, what do you mean I can buy a zebra? You know, we need to purchase these animals to rewild our reserve. A zebra costs a market price, and you know, it's about $350. And so people love that they could really tie their donation to a very specific thing, name it, and it's their impact that they can see, and you know, maybe one day they could even visit. So if there's ideas out there in the digital world of how we could then tokenize a zebra, or you know, I don't know because it's not my expertise, but I think there's a lot of innovation we could have around that storytelling or feeling an impact, and putting a physical, real world angle to your donation and the impact of your moving it from your wallet to the real world.
Love it, love it. I want to buy a zebra.
Yeah, talk to me.
You know, there are some other reports. Stanford did a good one a couple years back. Rhodri, I know you've written a lot about this and you know, done some great works. Anything you want to mention?
Well, obviously my own work. I haven't done anything that detailed on it for the last 18 months or so, I have to say. But yeah, no, I'd echo the Stanford report was a good one. I thought it, again, maybe it's that little bit not quite so up to date. I think it was 18 months ago, maybe even 2 years now, but it was a good outline of the kind of state of the market, including kind of financial and non-financial use cases as they were at the time.
Great, thank you. And if there are resources you want to share, you know, whether it's your own work or other work in the field, please, you know, type it into the chat and we'll make sure that people have that information. I'm not sure what the address is for that Stanford report, but maybe someone can track it down and place it in the chat. I think that those are all the great questions that came in. And I have other questions, but Connie, do we need to stop it here, or can I ask one or two other questions?
We will do a short transition and then to the next speaker in about 5 minutes. So if you want to do 2 or 3 more minutes, that would be great. Got it. Great. Thank you. Well, I want to encourage other people to ask more questions if you have any for our amazing panelists. One question that love to get your thoughts on is
What are some of the technology trends that are happening in the sector that you find interesting, innovative?
I'm not the biggest techie in this world, but I will say what I think is really interesting and innovative that could be used in conservation that's not being used in conservation as far as I know is more the immutability of the blockchain and how that can be applied. For example, permits for wildlife and ivory. There's a big gray hole in some countries where legally you can sell ivory if it's older than this year when the global ban went in. And so what happens in some countries is those permits just get copied and same number, it's fraud, it's corruption. And so, being able to have that trust or that ability to have a permit that cannot be changed, it cannot be reused, that it kind of tracks that market would really help save elephants. And again, with rhino horn, there's a big debate about trade, but also there's stockpiles of rhino horn, there's stockpiles of ivory, and sometimes they get stolen or it gets, there's an example of a government official taking, just going and helping themselves to the stockpile and taking it as a gift. So, I think that the technology can help with that tracking and making sure that there's a one-to-one relationship with this item that cannot be changed. No one can, create a false permit. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that could be done to help with corruption around the trade. Yeah.
Absolutely. Rick, I know you follow a lot of these trends and are close to the technology. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, but I'll share something that may not be an obvious answer, which is the enabling technology. We see that one of the big problems is simply lack of connectivity and lack of access to these digital solutions. And so we're super excited about the rise of KaiOS, which is creating a whole new category of mobile phones called smart feature phones. And these are basically smartphones that cost $15 to $20 a piece. Yes, they're that cheap. You can even buy them in the US via Alcatel at Best Buy. And they are able to run apps. And so it means that we can put devices in the hands of people, whether it's reducing the gender divide with digital access, et cetera, out in the field. And that's super interesting. And then you combine that with the increasing constellations of the low Earth orbit satellite solutions like Starlink. And we start to talk about really bridging that last mile and being able to make these digital solutions available in the places where we work and putting them in the hands of the more vulnerable populations. And that's something we're really excited about.
Wow. That's amazing. Any other folks want to talk about the kind of technology trends, developments, innovations?
Yeah, small, four specific small ones, right? That are transforming. Well, first of all, GiveTrack, right? Clearly that is an innovation. That's why many of us are here and we have projects. So shout out to that. The second would be, the .crypto domain extension, which has the hope of sort of everybody have their own domain name and transfer to folks peer-to-peer via crypto. That seems interesting. The Giving Block making, sort of a widget on a website that people can donate crypto. And then BBB Giving, Wise Giving Alliance that has, Give Safely with more of that accountability and trust piece. So those are just four small examples of other players entering the market.
Great, thank you.
I'll throw in two. They're not there. I guess they're tangentially related to blockchain in as far as it might provide a data layer for them, but they're things I'm sort of separately interested in. One is around what happens as the internet increasingly kind of breaks out from behind a screen and we're able to access it through different types of interfaces. So conversational interfaces, and things, we're sort of familiar with those through things like Siri and Alexa, but actually what does giving look like through those? And it particularly because it has to be kind of underpinned by algorithmic processes, I think it raises some really interesting questions and opportunities. And I think when you go beyond that to sort of edge computing and you've got kind of sort of ambient internet embedded in all the objects around you, the ability to collect data and use it and provide kind of frictionless giving experiences could be fascinating. And then the other one, we talked a lot about the use of data to kind of drive giving and appeal to the more rational head side of things. I think there's a really interesting question about the use of technology to appeal to the heart element through kind of immersive and experiential technologies like virtual and augmented reality, which are already being used in some really interesting ways by nonprofits for kind of storytelling and fundraising and kind of driving empathy. And actually, I think sort of tech is going to enlarge that tension between head and heart in the nonprofit world in really interesting ways.
Well, I think that's a great way to end our conversation today. I want to thank all of you amazing panelists for sharing your wisdom and insights, as well as the work that you're doing on the ground. Last thing I would say is, even though I've been pushing donations to BitGive because I'm a bit of a BitGive addict, we have obviously on the panel other wonderful organizations, Save the Children, Wild Tomorrow Fund, and Mercy Corps, and I would encourage you to give to them as well. We'll share the wealth and the cryptocurrency, especially as it becomes more valuable. And there's also the Send Rhodri Davies to Hawaii Fund if you want to contribute to that. So thank you again so much for joining us, people. Thanks to our panelists, and we'll end it there.